I'm going to talk about the longbow for a second. And I just came back on this topic because I happened to pop back on one of my warriors that's really old. It's the Master Samurai. Very old warrior that I kind of made and then never really came back around to. But what I realized is how good a few things are that I never really used before. All right. So I just want to make sure something real quick. So on this right here, you see that we have Bloodlust. So every time that you crit, you get a 33% chance um, to inflict bleed for 5 seconds. You see it's about 600 damage. Okay. And then when we look at our weapon, Superior Sigil of Earth. So you inflict bleeding for 6 seconds upon critically hitting a foe. So that alone. Oh, what's up, man? I'm just making a quick video about the longbow, and then I'm going to make another character. Got to make another warrior, man, for the 16th time. All right, so how I'm looking at the longbow right now. This is Rabid Gear, which I used to have this with Undead Ruins in the past. This one has 50% increased bleed duration. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get in town real quick. Now I want to talk about this for a second. So what this means is, you can see right now our crit chance is right at 60 something percent. As soon as we get Fury, we're at 91. Now, the longbow is stronger than what I used to do because I haven't ran a Condi build in a very long time. The issue with it was that basically that people would just like tanky characters with a lot of condition removal would just like remove things. But I used to have a build that had like 5,000 armor and really high condition damage using Undead Ruins, and it was very strong. But I never really bothered to do anything like this with a longbow. So you can see we're inflicting bleed for 6 seconds upon critically hitting a foe. And then if we take the arms trait, we get a 33% chance to inflict bleeding for 5 seconds on crit. But with a longbow, you get 2 arrows per auto attack, right? So you got 2 chances to proc this crit, the 33% chance bleed. Okay? And then you have 2 hits to potentially proc the sigil, which is a 6-second bleed. So that's an extra 1,200 damage. And then with crack shot, we're doing 1 second of burning. This is 354 damage, but with 2 arrows, that's 2 seconds of burning. You're going to get 2 procs of burning. And then when you look at our traits or our stuff and you use combustive shot, this is where this comes in. Because combustive shot can proc multiple times on an enemy, it has a chance to proc bloodlust, and it has a chance to proc the sigil. So you can rapidly stack bleeds with the bow if you have high crit chance. Okay? The second part of this is using the same sort of idea, is that if you have a power build like this one, this is all celestial gear, but it's sword, great sword right now. So the great sword, I put the bleeding on crit on the great sword, right? And build wise, it should all be the same. Okay, so we have a lot more condition damage here than we do anything else. Now, my thinking is even with the power build, you're going to get some benefit out of this, because if you do a 5% bonus damage sigil and you do 10,000 damage on one hit, you're going to get 500 damage extra, basically. But with this, you're going to get 6 seconds of bleed. And with warriors, if you're might stacking, you passively get condition damage. So you see right here, we already got 2 stacks bleed, 3 stacks of bleed, 200 damage. Four stacks. All right. I'll go find something real quick to kill that has more health. What I'm noticing, though, is that with the Greatsword, it has a lot of potential to generate might, more so than a lot of other weapons. But you see, in the past, I've used Aristocracy runes with, say, like an axe or a mace to generate 5 stacks of might every time that I do a burst skill. So with the axe, I can get 10 stacks of might, repeatedly decapping an enemy in Berserker stance. But the same method would be able to apply to any weapon. You could put a bleeding sigil on it and have the arms trait traded, and you'd be able to get 12 seconds of bleed or whatever just by auto attacking. And if you use the aristocracy's traits, you're going to get additional might generation. So you can spec your build for might generation healing, like might makes right, and use the aristocracy runes. And if you're doing 10k damage, you're going to be kind of doing on par with what was probably once anyway. So we're going to go straight into here. So you do that, straight into 100 blade. But you see, like, it was doing 3,000 bleed when we swapped into the Greatsword. And if you're going quick enough and you activate Flurry, you have quickness, you're going to be able to get the Flurry over with and then swap over to this before the immobilization goes down, right? So you still got 1,000. But it's a weapon set that I've never seen. So sword, shield, greatsword, and then you could potentially go full power, full berserker assassins, and you're just going to get to alternate back and forth between your flurry and your 100 blades. They work very well together. There's not a whole lot I can like argue with there, you know. So you go straight into 100 blades, straight into flurry, and then you'll have final thrust, and you'll have the greatsword arcing slice, which is basically a final thrust, but it also gives fury. I'm having some lag. But you also get bleed when you throw your rocks, which is cool. All right, 1 second here. Don't need this. But this also means that if you do condition damage with the sword shield, or you do it with the bow, you can run Signet of Might to get through blocks, which is a big deal because you're speccing the arms trait on both. And this is why I like Core Warrior more than I like Berserker Warrior. I've played Core Warrior for a long time. Recently, I've gotten more into Berserker because I can get more damage immunity, but it's not a big deal. Alright. Let me look here. Alright, any case, you can see that applying the bleed does help. So with this, I mean, we have Celestial gear, so our Greatsword damage isn't as high, but the bleed does help in general. Like, you swap back and forth, you're going to slowly get more. Even if you only get 4 or 5 stacks of this, it's damage over time. It wouldn't be too bad. I don't know which is better, though. That's the main thing. But it also means that if you do that bleeding on crit on the sword, you're going to get the sword proc plus the crit proc bleed plus the 30% chance. So your sword can potentially do 3 stacks instead of 1. Alright, so now if we go to the other one. So this is the bow. We're still going to get potentially 12 seconds of unblockable attacks. But this one's pure condition damage. And I've slowly stepped away from pure condition damage over the years just because people with heavy condition cleanse that I couldn't burst down. But if you run a build like this, you're going to be able to apply those conditions consistently. It's going to be a lot harder for someone to just remove them unless they have a lot of condition removal. So how this works is basically you come in, and every time I auto, you see we already got like almost 1,000 damage of bleed just autoing and 1,000 damage of burn. Alright. See, but even this, even the burst skill can apply that burn or apply that bleed. So you could potentially get like 4 different things trying to proc the stuff at the same time. The other thing is body blow. So like down here at the bottom, if we don't care about aggressive onslaught and we spec in body blow, this also means that when you're using the bow, this smoldering arrow can now inflict this bleed damage, which is 2,000 something bleed damage for like 20 something seconds on this build, which is pretty nuts. So it means that you can have bleed, 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 burn, burn, damage, burn, which is crazy, right? So like right here, you can come over and boop. So we got 2 stacks of bleed with that dazed arrow, and we're already at 1,000 damage and bleed right there. But it also means that if you're using this in a group, see right here, it procced bleed from the burst skill. Got 2 procs of bleed from the burst skill. We got 3 procs of bleed. Back to 3 because it procced again. So if you want to run a pure condition build, you actually can. And if you do a hybrid build, then this actually is really good. Because the one problem I've always had with the Longbow is that you lose your bleed stacks when you swap over to it. But it does a really good amount of damage. But on my Celestial gear, on my other armor set, we have 100% duration on pretty much everything. But on our bow, we wouldn't have room to put that 10% extra duration or 20% extra duration on burn, so we'd actually lose burn duration. But applying additional bleed would be really good. And in a build like this, though, like say if you're using dire gear, you wouldn't get as much bleed stacks, but you could still do body blow. And then if you're in a warrior group or something, and y'all that have 5 warriors, then you're going to have 5 dazes here, 5 targets hit, that are going to potentially do a 22-second bleed, you know? So that's 3 per. You get 6,000 damage. You can have 30,000 damage bleed or something like over 22 seconds. Pretty crazy. Just trying to find a boss or something that we can kill, but... With things like that, I can literally usually just leave it. Still got 12 seconds. 2 seconds. That being said, the bow isn't as strong as the greatsword. At least while fighting. It's not going to generate as much might or anything like that. Alright, here's a Mordrum. They were already doing about 5,000 condition damage DPS right there. The other thing is that if you spec for an arms trait or a discipline tree, you get this extra condition removal here. And then if you go for a defense tree, you can get additional condition removal. But you'll lose your stability and stuff on this one. But this has gotten me to think about my Berserker build as well, because my Berserker build uses either a defense line here, or it uses arms for the most part for all this extra damage. But if you spec in the discipline tree, you're going to get way more condition removal, which is like the big thing with my celestial build. The condition removal is always a factor. Anyway, I think those sigils are pretty interesting. Something you don't see very commonly and could be really good. So like this one, we're doing body blow to get additional things with the mace. But I don't know. Like, we're using the mace to generate might, which we could use for additional healing here if we want. But this is a pure Condi build with Trailblazer gear. So it's a little bit tankier than the other one, but it doesn't have access to crit damage. But with this, last stand, you're going to get 3 additional seconds of damage immunity. But if you spec for Cleansing Ire, which is like conditions are like the main weak spot for this build. And then this one, either we were doing the shout heals, or we were doing arms trait to get additional damage. But I could do discipline and get the condition removal, and then the crack shot to apply additional burning, which would really help my bow out. And then also give us more might generation, allow us to swap a little bit faster. We could do burst skills or heightened focus to gain additional quickness. This right here is 7 seconds of quickness. I mean, that's a lot of quickness just on its own. Combined with Berserker's stance, I mean, that's about as good as you can get. At least in this. And then with this build, we could still keep Shake It Off, because we have the Tempest runes. And since I don't have a super high armor pool on this character, I wouldn't really bother with balance stance. But this one has really high duration. So this one's almost 100% burning duration, and should be almost basically 100% bleed duration. lose a lot of damage just from changing that. Holy moly.
Now we can fight for real.
Anyway. I just thought it was interesting because you can actually get more stuff off of that. But the conditions are actually the main weakness of anytime that I run a warrior with like lower health pools in a fight, it always comes down to the condition removal. And I've always been able to pull off 1v1s with Shake It Off in general and Cleanse. But this would just give you so much more condition removal and flexibility, and at least like with a condition build. But when it comes down to those bleeding on crit sigils, I just never really considered them that viable or whatever in the past. Like, anytime I made a power build, I was always like, yeah, like, what's that extra bleed gonna do? So you always do like 5% increased power, but it's more than that because you're getting 500 plus damage a second in bleed, which is basically equal to a 5% bonus in damage if you're hitting for 10,000 damage each hit. And it's over time, so like if they happen to avoid some damage from you or whatever, it's still going to proc, which I find very interesting. And if Celestial Gear's the best for it, I don't know, because with at least with the Celestial Gear, we're able to still proc, or at least still have like a bit of power for our Greatsword. So that's really good. But a pure power build with Sword, Shield, Greatsword, it might still work. Because if you have the crit, you're still going to get the chance for the crit on the sigil and on the trait. And then your sword is still going to apply 3 stacks of bleed on auto, which is crazy. Um, yeah, so we're trying to get the night gear on this guy. I was going to do a super heavy armor on my, this guy, because he was going to be my main warrior now, but I might make a secondary warrior So this one will have more of my stronger, like more expensive armors probably on it. Is what I think I'm gonna do. So right now it has like my celestial gear, it has um my berserker and assassin's combo gear. It's gonna have a full set of knight gear, and it has trailblazer gear. So on this character, I'm going to have all the armor sets that I could potentially mix and match to make combinations. But we're going to make a new warrior that will be more of a basic armor gear thing going on. A test. Actually, I need to see something real quick. Need to see what my armor set looks like on a bigger warrior. I know my other armor set looks stupid. Alright, so this guy real quick. I'm going to go wardrobe. We are doing this helmet. These shoulders. We had this. We had this. We had this. Things on a Norn just look crazy. Yeah, probably not worth it. I think we want the Master Samurai. I was going to rename it, but then I figured it's cheaper just to get a new character. Because, like, a renaming kit's like 1,000 gems. A new character's like 800. So, yeah, and you get the extra build slots and everything. I think it's just better to get an extra character slot until you run out of character slots. Unless you want everything on just one character. But this guy, I think he's going to stay as like our long-ranged option. Like I want him to be like a glass long-range type build character, I think. But he also has celestial gear on him, so that's the other thing. It's like all of my warriors, the one thing they have in common is like they all have celestial gear. Generally, like each one of them has one set of celestial gear pretty much either way. So I spent way too much money on it. This face is massive. The hell? Alright, I'm going to end this right here and I'll be back here in a second.